No, that's definitely fair. But I think over a course of your life, you start to get a better understanding, as you'd expect, of what that service and what that duty actually looks like. And to a certain extent, you have to create it or structure it, suiting your passions, suiting your preference, and suiting the need as well.
How do you understand it to begin with? How do you know that that's a part of your destiny?
Well, we don't put it this way. We don't all sit in a room with a queen and a blackboard going. It's a kind of, I don't know. I think I wouldn't say it's in our blood, but at the same time, I think it's over history and watching our parents, watching our grandparents, and just learning our way through that process. I mean, Christ, I think I went to my first proper royal engagement at the age of 4 or 5. So you make mistakes, like we all have, and then slowly you find your way, and you start to realize that you've got an incredible platform to make really positive change.
Did you always embrace this role and responsibility?
No, I don't think I understood it. I think what happened to my mum probably put me a step back, thinking, well, how could someone who did so much for the world and did so much for everybody else could be treated like that by a certain institution? So it takes a bit of getting used to, but as I said, it's once you understand the privileged position that you're in, you've then got to spend the rest of your life earning that privilege and giving back, and also getting the trust and respect of the general public, and then using that position for good.
What helped you to understand that position that you were in?
Spending 10 years in the military was one.
And what did that do for you?
I think I wouldn't say it changed my outlook on life, but there were certainly experiences that I went through during those 10 years that not only was I surrounded by normal people on a day-to-day basis and being able to share and talk about everyday issues that they were going through, but it was a grounding moment for me as well. Wearing the same uniform as all of the people that I was serving with, getting an opportunity to serve your country on operations, but also being part of a family. And that's not just the guys and the girls that were wearing the uniform, but also the wives, the girlfriends, the kids. That whole network of support was huge. But I think my understanding of service and duty became really, really ingrained, or it was given to me by my service in the military, because that's what it's all about. And you're taking young people from some of the most deprived cities and towns across the UK for the British Armed Forces, and I know it's the rest for the rest of the world as well. But you're taking some people who've had some really, really hard upbringings and hard backgrounds, and you're training them to be ambassadors. You're training them to be fighters, but you're training them to be brothers in arms with each other as well. And I think that's an incredibly powerful tool to be able to do. And I have a huge amount of respect for anybody, whatever their background is, to be able to serve your country.
Well, we're going to come back to that in a little bit in terms of some of the efforts that you have around leaders in the military. But I want to ask you, you traveled the whole world in both your military role, in your royal role. As you were going around the world, how did you get more focused on things that you cared about? I mean, we see a lot of pictures of you with children. You spent a year in Lesotho,
Yep.
right? And, bring that to life for us.
I get all of my passion, inspiration, and energy from young people. And that is from the ages of 6 or 7 in the Caribbean, when you get a 6-year-old turning around to you and telling you exactly how much damage your country and the developed world is causing them, all the way to 28, 30-year-olds who at some point in their life have already a better understanding of duty and service than I ever did at that age, because it's all about giving back. So I think that, look, lots of people say that, your job of traveling the world is wonderful. Of course it's wonderful, but when we get sent to some countries, we don't always get to see the beautiful parts. We're always there trying to deal with some of the issues, but also doing everything we can to bring people together to make change, to make positive change. And And it's an absolute joy and a privilege to meet the younger generation of change makers across the world who genuinely believe in the fact that they, as a single person and as a group and as a community and as a nation, not only can change their country but can change the world as well. And that is what keeps me going on a day-to-day basis.
So when a 6-year-old says to you that your country is ruining theirs, what do you do or say?
Agree with them slightly. Look, we all know the issues that are out there, with the climate and the environmental issues, and it's, I don't want to say it's refreshing, but it is nice to know that kids that young have an appreciation and understanding greater than some of the people who have been on this planet for 60, 70 years. So I think without credit, I've been a pessimist many times because of the work that we end up doing. You can be surrounded by negativity sometimes. But as I said just now, the younger generation of the world has turned me into an optimist because they are the best connected, the most passionate generation that I think that we've ever had. And what we need to do is be able to create a platform so that they can be heard, because they have the solutions to some of the world's biggest problems.
I was actually going to ask you that because my sense would be that you've seen a lot of things up close. So you've seen miracles and you've seen great sadness. I mean, you go to a famine. Most of us read about one. And so you can see some things that perhaps none of us could really understand the scale or the breadth of the devastation up close. And you're saying that young people are the ones that keep you motivated to do this work. Why do you think young people are often so underestimated by society? Why do you think that 6-year-old voice or that 10-year-old voice or that 15-year-old voice is not treated the same way as that 60-year-old voice?
Because that's the way it's always been. Before social media, before internet, before the way that everybody was connected in a positive way, it was always presumed, this is my take on it, which may be very wrong, but I think the presumption was always the longer you spend on this planet, the more experience and the more knowledge that you have. Fine, I think we all agree that the longer you're around for, the more experience you have. But what kind of a world are we going to end up being part of if we don't listen to the younger generation who have all the solutions? They're better connected than ever before, and because of the connectivity, they have the opportunity and the ability to be able to fix problems in a quarter of the amount of time that anybody else of previous generations was able to do over a 10, 15, 20-year period.
So you're affiliated, as many in your family are, with many, many charities. You're patrons of certain organizations. I read that you have about 15 charities that you're affiliated with. Your brother and sister-in-law have about 35, but that's less than some other members of your family, right? You all are doing it a little bit differently. Yeah. So how do you focus? And tell us, by contrast, how many charities might other royals be affiliated with in different generations?
Hundreds. My grandmother had to rewrite the rule books to a certain extent. My father, my mother have also done it their way, and now we're the younger generation coming through, trying to do it our way because the world has changed so much. We believe that by streamlining and by bringing people together in order to effect real positive change is the only way forward. And it worked for previous generations, and we will always say yes to becoming patron of a charity that we believe in and that we're incredibly passionate about. But I think in today's world, you have to be involved with things that make sense to where your passions lie, rather than potentially turning up to a charity once a year. I don't think that's necessarily beneficial to anybody. But our mental health campaign, Heads Together, back in the UK, is a classic example of where we were able to bring together 8 charities within the mental health sector.
With your mic.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to give you.
No worries. Thank you. We were able to bring together 8 mental health charities that have been working in the sector for many, many, many years. But being able to bring them together and say, right, you guys have never sat around a table together and discussed the main issues. What we want to be able to do now is, through our foundation, create a platform in which your expertise and your experience is elevated. And therefore, you tell us what needs to be done around mental health within the UK and globally. And they said, if you can remove the stigma, that makes our life a lot easier. So that's exactly what we did. We tried to remove the stigma and tried to normalize the discussion around mental health.
So in some ways, the past, and that's the protocol may have been lending your name and using your name to create a halo around the organization that would benefit it. And it sounds like the younger royals are more about more than just name association, more direct action and involvement. So do you feel you're more hands-on? Is that fair to say?
I think in today's world you have to be. I think you have to be much more hands-on, and also.
Why? I mean, why do you have to be? You could have done it the same way. You could have had 200 charities and been a patron of them. I mean, no one would have thought any different.
No, but if you end up working individually for, let's say, 200 charities, in today's world, I think that kind of dilutes the impact that you can have. What our foundation is all about and what our platform is all about is encouraging people to come together, to work together, so that there's less competition within that sector, whether it's financially or otherwise, and saying, right, guys, you're doing the same thing. Please, let's get around a table, talk to each other, work it out, and come up with a long-term strategy.
But doesn't this seem obvious? Like, why haven't other people done it then? So you've created, with your brother and sister-in-law, the Royal Foundation. Mm-hmm. Okay, you've started a charity. My first question would be, do we need another charity? So, what was your thinking in coming together? Whose idea was this?
So that's my motto is exactly that. Why another charity? Our foundation is not another charity. We're not trying to take up any more space. I think we all agree that the charity sector is quite full at the moment. But as I said, what we're trying to do is use our platform to be able to bring people together to affect change.
So why haven't other people done this?
Because I genuinely believe that we as a foundation will never be able to compete with some of the other big foundations financially. As weird as that may sound, but that's fact. What we do have is a unique ability to be able to put our name and everything that comes with to a really good purpose, to a really good cause. And as I said, there are many organizations out there that have never come together and that would never sit around a table and discuss the topic of which they're all involved with, but we've proven that. We've made that possible.
So in some ways you're leveraging your name, it seems to me. Does this create something very, very unique to you and your brother and sister-in-law, in that you can get these people to come together and talk to each other? Because working together is hard.
Yeah, well, it's hard working together as a family. It's hard working together. And it's hard working together when you are scrapping for the same money within the same sector, as a lot of people know. But, through some of the initiatives that we've created, Invictus Games, as an example, that brought together 10, 12 different service charities to be able to share expertise, share knowledge, share experience, specifically around mental health, so that they were all standardization across the board to make sure that whatever the best practice was, everybody was sharing that. And therefore, if there's a wounded soldier that's left the forces, that's been lost in amongst the chaos of everything else, if they stick their head above the parapet and they go to Help for Heroes, one of the charities in the UK, if that's not for them, like you go to your supermarket, everybody chooses the supermarket that they want to go to. It's the same with the charity sector. And if you've got 101 choices to choose from, every single person is uniquely wired, and therefore their cure or their fix will be specific to them. But what we're able to do is bring everybody together once again around a table and say, right, you're now part of a group, you're part of something, and therefore anybody that comes in gets the opportunity or the option of 12 of you rather than one of you.
Whose idea was this? I mean, who was it? You or Prince William or
the Royal Foundation?
Yeah,
I can't even remember. But
was it just obviously a good idea? Or
I think it comes with the territory, doesn't it? I mean, once you realise the effect that your name and your position can have, surely all you want to do is make sure that you spend every living day trying to bring people together and trying to make the most of that position.
But it hadn't been done before this way.
No, true. But as I said, with the way that the world has changed and with the platforms that we now have, used in a positive way, we can really bring people together from all over the world, across the Commonwealth of 52 countries, of a third of the world's population, of which 60% is under the age of 30. That is a platform of youth of which needs to be listened to.
But the scale and the vastness of that is really hard then to manage. So how do you pick what you're going to do? So you mentioned the Invictus Games. You do everything from that to a program to develop coaches in the UK. You do, and around the world. You mentioned Heads Together, which is focused on mental health. How do you decide what to do? Because you have literally seen a lot. You've seen a lot of programs. You've seen great need in the world. Who puts a finger down on something and says, this one?
Yeah, it's. I think when you're part of a large charity or a large foundation, I think it is very hard to say no. But I think what we've realized is it's even harder to have a finger in every single pie. And therefore, for us, early intervention, where possible, is definitely the key. Impact is definitely has to be the priority. None of us want to spend the rest of our lives connected to charities of which we're just making people's lives better. Far rather identify a problem and try and fix it before it becomes an even bigger problem.
So when you come at it from that perspective, is there a vetting process for what you decide to do, or is it these are just particular areas of interest to one or all of you?
I think it depends on our background, on our passions of what we're really interested in.
Do people pitch you ideas?
There has to be that connection. Sorry?
Do people pitch you ideas?
Yeah, there's plenty of ideas pitched, but taking it back to the mental health thing, that was luck of the timing. There was an issue that needed to be talked about, probably needed to be talked about many, many years ago. But I reckon 10 years ago, if that discussion had happened, or we'd started that campaign, or anybody else had started that campaign, never would have succeeded. But the fact is the success of that campaign was built on the need within the United Kingdom, and the fact that every single person in the United Kingdom was ready for that conversation. And all of a sudden, once you normalise that topic, that discussion, everybody started to realise, wow, not only do I know other people that have suffered, I might have suffered as well. And then once that becomes normalised, then all of a sudden you realise that actually more people have tasted a mental health issue to a certain extent than haven't.
Right.
That's the tipping point of which we're at the moment. But as I said, the success wasn't based on us. The success was based on the fact that everybody was ready for the conversation.
So I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but I just want to ask just practically. So let's just say that comes to you. It has these unique characteristics where you can see the need, you can see the ability to leverage, you can see how lending your name and reputation to this will elevate an issue that is very important, whose moment has come. Do you vote? Did the three of you sit down and say, I'm in or I'm out? Or
it's still a young organisation. I mean, our first grant was in 2012, I think it was, actually with these guys. But so yeah, we're still very much in the infancy years as such. But what we're trying to do is we want to prove the model in different sectors, and then once we've proven it, then we want to expand it. And there's no point in doing it otherwise, because what's the point in being involved in something unless you know that you're succeeding to a certain extent, if you know what I mean?
Right. Has this been easier or harder than you thought to start your own foundation and to, what would you say?
I think it's made easier with the people that we work with, the support that we have. Obviously, it's certainly made easier having the name and the position, because with that comes the ability to convene some amazing people and some expertise, of which a lot of other organisations wouldn't have the opportunity to do. So, yeah, it's been emotional. Highs, no lows, but there is so much to do, as everybody in this room knows. There is so much to do, and the question is making sure that you streamline it, you do it the right way first time, and the crucial point is that we listen, and that we don't go into a project, we don't go into a community and stamp our authority down and go, we're the Royal Foundation, this is how you're going to do it. It's completely opposite, and that's why I believe that we've been so successful, is because we've gone into those communities and said, right, we all know there's a problem, what is the solution? And let us facilitate and fund you in the process.
So why do you think it is that, again, this model is so unique, which seems so obvious because so many organizations say they have the answer and they go and impose that. So, how did you see this differently? Or learn to see it differently?
No, I think as far as I can explain it, to us it was a very simple case of we have to listen. We have to listen to the younger generation because they are the cure of some of the world's biggest problems. They're the cure of many communities as well. And as we'll hear from these guys, especially from Chantal, you're talking about young people, individuals who have lived experience. You can teach someone to be a lawyer. You can teach someone to be a pilot. You can't teach some of the experiences and some of the scars that some of these people have. And therefore, in my mind, the workforce is already there. What we have to do is be able to create a platform, be able to create a way that workforce is then reintegrated back into society because they can do things that we can never do. And if I was in their position, I wouldn't want someone in a suit and tie or a prince or anybody else telling me how to do things. I'd much rather them come in and say, right, we have an amazing platform, we have an amazing ability, we've got a bit of money, how do you want to do this? How can we succeed first time and make sure that you guys are running this project?
So this is a perfect segue. I'm going to bring out our two other guests because we can go deeper on this issue. So Chantal Stefanovic is going to come out, Stefanovic, and David Peterson. They're coming right out. And this is a real-life example. This is exciting. So Chantal is here from Nottingham, and David is here from Pullman. So we're going to tell your stories, but before I do that, I want to use you to help me introduce Chantal's story because we're going to start with her. One of your programs is called Full Effect. And Full Effect is
It's one of their programs.
Well, where the Royal Foundation has gotten deeply involved. Is that fair to say? Adopted would not be the right word, but certainly you've created it together in some ways, right?
In short, before I went to Afghanistan in 2012, turned around to the Royal Foundation said, please find somewhere where a community which is suffering from youth violence and knife crime, of which we can go into and try and help them. But it's got to be led by them. And then I think it was April 2013, arrived in Nottingham, chosen by the Royal Foundation, and met this incredible group of young people that, in their way, were trying to do everything they could, but had been let down so many times by other organisations and other people. Not just some people had struggled. Once again, they come in thinking they knew exactly how to do it, and they were a letdown. And you could see it in their faces. So all we wanted to do was try to work out what already existed. CRS existed, the community recording studio, headed up by Trevor Rose, and Epic Partners, of which Chantal was part of. Those two organisations existed. I think they worked 200 metres apart in St Anne's, in Nottingham. They'd never met each other.
Okay.
So that was a classic example of us coming and going, right, who do you guys recommend? They said, them and them. Right, you guys interested in working together? Let's make this happen. And it was all led by them.
So Chantal, will you tell us a little bit first about your story before we get into the work that you do as a program coordinator for Full Effect?
Yeah.
So just tell us about how you grew up, because I think in America, we have movies like James Bond that lead us to romanticize all of the UK. And we don't think of the UK having communities like Nottingham, which have had violence and very, very tough situations. I read dating back to the 1800s. Yeah. It's gone on for a very long time. You grew up in a really tough circumstance. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I grew up in St Anne's in Nottingham, United Kingdom. Years ago, St Anne's was built to house poor people. So to put everybody together. And unfortunately, that's kind of continued. Growing up in St Anne's, it was very tough. You have got a lot of different opportunities, positive and negative, a lot more negative than positive. So when you are living in a household that is suffering from deprivation, there isn't much money, you've got a lot of children there.
How many children in your family?
5 children in my house.
Oldest?
I'm the oldest, yeah. So 2 parents. And growing up knowing that your mum is missing her dinner to feed you, it kind of, all you want to do is help, and you help by any means necessary. So the easiest kind of solution for me when I was younger was to go out and help in a way that was quite negative. My father was very good at teaching me how to make money. That was one of my biggest things growing up. When I got to about 16, my mum finally wanted to better herself and better our situation. So she started doing community sports leadership and helping out in the St. Anne's community. And she dragged me along to see if I would do something positive instead of continuing down the wrong path and that spiral. And that's how I got into working with Epic, just doing volunteer work in the community, and it was in my community where I lived, and I started seeing a difference within myself. And okay, this is pretty good. I started empowering myself, so it was a gradual, slow progression, I'm not going to lie, but it's got me to where I am now.
So help us a little bit, because you were a kid involved in crime. I mean, this was not light stuff. This is not running to the corner store and stealing a cupcake. This is drugs. This was a lot of things. So and then you had gone off to, and introduced to it by your father, correct?
Yes. And the community, that's what happened. That was the easiest way. That was what was going off. So, going down to the local pub with your family, there was always something happening, and that was just apparent. It was there. It's what happened. So
then you went off and started doing it on your own. So you were, because you thought you were helping. Yeah. You were off, basically involved in a life of crime as a 16, 17-year-old, right?
I became an adult quite young, but forced to be an adult and take on a lot of responsibility. And I knew I wanted better. I knew that I wanted better for my family. It was just getting out of a really tough situation. And there's not many opportunities, especially if you've been involved in something so negative. Not many people will give you that chance. They won't, okay, let's give you this chance today, and let's see how it goes. That doesn't happen.
So you're 22 years old, and you basically turn the page on that life. Yeah. You start taking courses, you start volunteering when you're younger with your mother. Yeah. But I mean, you literally walked away from one life and walked into another one of service.
Yeah, I walked away from a life. But like I said, I still live in the community. It's still right in front of me. I wouldn't say that I turned away from it, because I embrace what's happened to me as a child and growing up, because it's made me the person I am today. And if I hadn't experienced that, I might not be here. So I don't think it's about turning away from it. It's about looking past it, trying to find that solution to those situations.
So you are doing something. Before I turn to David, explain to us what Full Effect is, because you start with children who are very young, right?
Yes. So obviously, like I said, there's a partnership between myself, Epic, and CRS. Epic already kind of worked a little bit with children, did after-school provision and holiday provision, that kind of stuff. And then obviously we met the Prince and started having a look at this kind of project we wanted to do. We hooked up with the CRS, and we realised that we work in schools from 8 to 12 years, and then CRS work with 13 and older. So it just made perfect sense, and both of what we were doing in the same community just complemented it very well. So
I love this story, and David, I promise I'm coming to you. You're touring Nottingham, and she gives you a letter, right?
Touring.
Well, I mean, you're visiting.
Me and my band, yeah.
No, I didn't mean it that. I mean, but you're going around observing conditions and issues. I'm certainly not meaning to make light that are pretty significant. And this woman comes up to you and gives you a letter.
There was a group of them actually in the community recording studio, and the whole point was I was going to be there, and we were going to have an open discussion and talk about the issues of which these guys were facing and hopefully get to some solutions.
But she didn't want to talk.
She was the only person that decided not to talk, and then handed me a letter afterwards.
I was the only female in the room as well. And
out of how many people?
There was about 12 to 13. I was the only female, and a lot of these people that were around me, you know, I lived in that area, and for a long time you hold what's happened to you very close to your heart, and you don't want to express it because you don't want people to judge you. And because I lived around those people, you know, I just felt a little bit uncomfortable, so I forced a letter on him instead.
So you planned it. You said, I'm going to write a letter before I see, and then you read the letter. What did the letter say?
The letter was her life story on well, actually it wasn't your life story. It was as much as you could say on a two-sided piece of A4, because she quite understandably didn't want to share most of the stuff that she'd been through, which is pretty harrowing. She didn't want to share that amongst that group of people. So she decided to say, right, you need to know my backstory. You need to know exactly what happens in this community. There it is. It's in a letter. So, and I really respect and admire that. But it was exactly what I needed to know, that we were in the right place.
And then afterwards, you two have had this great partnership, the foundation and Full Effect, and you've actually developed a friendship. I mean, I watched you together. You seem very comfortable with each other. Is that odd to you? Does that seem unusual? I mean, I feel even odd asking, you know.
At first, I think the first time we ever met, I don't think I could say my name properly. It was...
Do you text?
It was breathed out. It's like, Chantel. And that was it. So, but then as time went on, you know, Harry is an amazing person. He's very inspiring. He makes you very relaxed, and he listens. It was the first time that someone came to our community and listened to us and, you know, didn't tell us what we needed to do or how to fix ourselves. He was more intrigued about us and what he could do for us instead of anything else. So, yeah, he was really, really inspirational.
So, David, you are the president and executive director of the, I want to get the whole title right, the National A. Philip Randolph Pullman Porter's Museum, right?
The first and only Black labor history museum in the world.
First and only, which means we need a lot more.
Absolutely.
And your story is also a unique one in some ways, but also the story of tens of millions of people in this country and in other places. So you grew up with a couple of siblings, single mom. Tell us a little bit about your backstory. You were going to lab school, which is one of the best schools in Chicago. You had a good life. And then what happened?
Well, I mean, I came from an entrepreneurial background. You know, my mom was an entrepreneur, my dad was an entrepreneur. So in that, through mitochondria DNA, I just kind of picked it up. When I was a kid, I used to pick up chip bags off the ground and put them in the microwave and sell them as keychains to the people in the neighborhood. You know, my mom would have community festivals, and I would work the nacho and cheese stand, you know. So I came from that entrepreneurial background, and as I got a little older, she would always push me into places that would nurture that entrepreneurial perspective. So Gallery 37 wound up being one. It was a summer jobs program I had right after graduating from Ray School, right down the street from Lab School. And, you know, that's where I met people like Hebrew Brantley, Pugsley Adams, who were also in my cohort as far as Gallery 37. And we made art, and they sold our art. So at a very young age, I was introduced to cultural economic development because I understood that our history, heritage, and culture is for sale, and it can benefit us, you know. And then moving fast forward, graduated from Kenwood Academy, right down the street from Obama's house. I wound up going to Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida.
But there was a you've skipped over.
Yeah.
And I don't mean again to pry. You're going to lab school. Your family can't pay. You're taken out. Mm-hmm. You move to a rough area on the South Side. Mm-hmm. Culture shock, you said. Mm-hmm. I mean, you said you've seen both sides. Mm-hmm. You're thrown into that circumstance, what happens? I mean, tell us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always went to school in Hyde Park, but we moved from Hyde Park to the Wild Hundreds. Pullman, which is 103rd, 115th Street, Cottage Grove to the Expressway. So that historic district, basically changed my life. When we moved over there, my mom was doing some real estate speculation. And then that later evolved into an entrepreneurial endeavor, if you will. So from that, I always was kind of captured by the culture, by the arts, by entrepreneurship. When I was 14, one of my best friends was murdered right on my next block from my house. And then that's when, things became real for me, if you will. And
what kept you focused? So you had this mom, but
Yeah.
because you stayed on the path, you went to college, you got a master's, you never left that community. You stayed there in terms of your work with the museum.
Absolutely.
What kept you focused? And then let's talk about how you're paying it forward in terms of working with young people there.
Yeah, I mean, what kept me focused was a divine appointment,
Did you always know that?
When you allow yourself, I used to go to St. Sabina Church, shout out to Father Flager. He showed me at a young age kind of how to create that personal relationship with God. So with that, as I became older and I researched religion a lot, I understood that most of it was all inside of me. So that's what kept me going. So I began to use myself as a vessel for the ancestors to pretty much do the work, and in that I understood that I was standing on the shoulders of giants. So basically that turned into everyday motivation. And when I was at FAMU, I dropped out, for a little bit because I had read Miseducation of the Negro, and I was like, you know what, I don't need school. I'm going to start my own business, right? And then some guys from the FAMU Investment Committee kind of scooped me up, and they nurtured me, and they let me know that I needed to stay in school and finish, but they introduced me to the world of entrepreneurship. The FAMU Investment Committee basically took FAMU's endowment rate up completely. They raised their endowment rate 500%. So you're talking about 1.9 to 9.7% from 2006 to 2007. This is what this entrepreneurial investment committee did at Florida A&M. So that proof of concept let me know that this is something that I could do for the rest of my life. And as a result of that, I grew up in the hip hop era, so I was a contributor to hip hop, and it was cool to do then. But as I became older, I realized that this is the same mechanism that creates billionaires. All the millionaires that I know come from the arts community.
But you didn't pursue commerce. You pursued a life of service.
Absolutely.
And you're talking about where hip hop meets history now.
Absolutely.
With Museum 44, and that 44 has
Stands
something
for
to
the
do with
44th
someone.
president. Yeah, we came up with that concept in 2009. Good Morning America came to the museum, and they did a live segment right there. And as they were doing the segment, I said to myself, you know what, we could do this ourselves, right? So I said, we're going to do a TV show. We're going to call it Museum 44 because we want to change the narrative. We want to control the narrative. I'm tired of looking on the news and seeing someone else tell me what I'm about. I'm looking on the news and they're saying, yeah, these young kids, they're urban terrorists. And so I'm like, well, that's not me. I came up in this neighborhood. These same guys that you're demonizing are the same guys that would pick me up from the train at 103rd and Cottage Grove and walk me home every day and say, man, you know what? This young guy, he's going to be somebody. So we want to make sure that we protect him. We instill these principles and this discipline in him so that he can navigate on any street that he walks in. Until this day, 23 years later, here's your proof of concept sitting before you.
Great. So I want to ask all three of you, building on that question, how hard is it today to inspire young people? Now, you're young people, so I'm 48 and I sound like I'm Methuselah, but relative to you, I am. You are actually young people that are in the trenches, all three of you in your own way. And society has made it easier in some ways with the connectivity and harder in others, in that the connectivity leads to some anonymity and some passivity, I think it would be fair to say. Doing what you do, how hard is it? I mean, you're saving lives.
Just to be frank, it's very hard. I mean, because, I hear myself as I'm older saying things that my mom used to say, you're just entitled. You kids just think it's going to be easy. You're from the microwave era. You want it right now, right? So as I'm mentoring these kids, and I'm, because we have an After School Matters program right now. Once again, Museum 44, where hip hop meets history. We have a podcast as well, Museum 44. But anyway, as I'm mentoring these kids, sometimes they're on their phones, and sometimes they come late, and I'm just like, got some nerve. And I'm like, oh my God, you've become your mom. Like, what are you doing? So I got to kind of step back and then kind of look at it from their lens. Okay, well, maybe they're, they've been in school all day. Maybe they're a little jittery. So, I give them a little time to kind of, sit back and do what they do. But there's a sense of entitlement that they just naturally have. And it's our duty as leaders and as mentors to instruct to them that this is something that they need to value. So every day, that's my thing. You guys need to understand, there are a list of kids that would rather be in your space. This isn't just a summer program. This is a job. After School Matters is paying you. After School Matters, they have 7,000 teen programs across the city of Chicago. Since 91, After School Matters has employed 200,000 people. So think about that. So you guys need to understand that and appreciate it. And then once again, I just have to humble myself. I go down in the office and just laugh to myself like, this is hilarious.
Well, I love that you're talking about After School Matters because, as you know, I chair After School Matters, and
Absolutely.
We're doing amazing work. And one of the reasons that you were here so that people that we've had these direct relationships, we could enhance the opportunity for them in terms of Chantel and David. But answer the question, Chantel, the same question. How hard is it to inspire the young people? I mean, you're starting really young because you're starting with at-risk youth that you want to make sure don't go down the wrong path. Is it hard for you?
It's always hard because times change. And I used to think I was quite hip. And now I've realised that I've got older. So it is hard for the fact that the children are not inspired. They're not inspired by the things that I thought they would be. Now it's mobile phones on social media and everyone on TV. So they haven't... For me, I always say to them, I had to inspire myself. I had to be my hero in my own eyes, and every mistake I made, I had to take a lesson from that to inspire myself to go further. And I think a lot of children nowadays don't have that inspiration within themselves. So it's about trying to shine that light on them, just like the light was shined on me. I now need to shine the light on them to give them their stage and for them to become whatever they want to become. So it is hard and it's a learning process, definitely.
What do you think about this, Prince Harry? How hard does it feel for you to inspire young people? It sounds like you are definitely inspired by young people, so you've got the other side going in spades.
Yeah, I think, especially for these guys, it's about turning a negative into a positive. And as I said at the beginning, some of these guys have lived experiences of which you cannot teach people. They have it, and they've made that choice to give back to their community.
But isn't that true of you too?
Yes, yeah, no, of course it is. I mean, if you've got a lived experience in anything, then that automatically gives you the ability to be able to see it from their eyes as such. But I think, she's not sort of really showing the full story because the effect that she's having on these kids, and let's not forget that she's making sure that they have better choices and that they don't end up making bad choices.
Bring it to life for us. Tell us what she's not telling.
No. I'm just saying she's downplaying her talents, her abilities, because before she was around, primary school kids at the age of 7 or 8 years old were being used by their younger brothers to move guns, move knives around the place. She herself, she wouldn't mind me saying, hopefully, at a young age was used in that sense as well. And what she's doing is using her experiences to make sure that those young kids don't have to go through what she goes through. And that, again, is the same with mental health. You talk about mental health sufferers. It's a community. It's a club of people, and nobody who's suffered ever wants anybody else to go through what they've been through. And that's what I love about both of you guys and about the young people in today's world. I think there's a real lack of trust, and there's this sense of optimism in a world where wherever they turn, they don't really know who to trust. And therefore, if you can build that trust, and it may take time, but if you can build that trust and give them that belief and give them that confidence, because all of the potential and all of the qualities, all of the skills are within every single one of these people. And therefore, we shouldn't stop looking elsewhere. We should start looking at where the actual problem is and realizing that the solution is all around it.
Is so much of the solution about, just using your example with Chantel, and I read a quote that talked about your relationship, that talked about the fact, well, a prince said that we mattered. is validation, and you just said you're validating these young people. Is one of the silver bullets of this validation? I mean, is that a big theme that seems to run through it? That by showing up in Nottingham, by showing up for these kids, by showing up in Pullman and giving them the awareness of these issues that you're talking about, is that in itself perhaps more than half the battle?
Yeah, I think a lot of, me personally, a lot of children that I know, they're let down, and they're let down over and over and over again, and you can only take so many knocks until you just go, I'm done with this. So I think it is about being there and trusting and having that belief, and like I said before, just listening as well. I live in the area I work in, so I never shut off, ever. There are children that live all around me, and a lot of children know they can shout my name or knock on my door, or families, parents, advice. I think for me it's about bringing people together as well as just as kind of believing in them at the same time.
How do you then protect yourself and take care of yourself in that situation? Because that's an overwhelming obligation, especially if you have the thesis that they were let down, which I'm also curious, who let them down? Is this society? Is this parents? What are we not doing right in letting these kids down? But how are you processing all of that? Because you live there, so you're dealing with it. There's nowhere for you to go.
Yeah. I have very thick curtains and blinds, and after I finish, they come down and they close. I think there's a ricochet effect. It's society, and then the parents, and then, sometimes some parents, they try their best. I know so many families that want to give more, but they just cannot find more to give. So I think it goes down within that triangle of society, parents. We need to empower the parents, empower the children, empower that community, and try and give instead of taking all the time. We've got to give something back.
How much of your transformation was about acceptance as well? I mean, I remember having this conversation with my husband, and we were talking about issues related to childhood and some things that I encountered that were very hard. And I remember him saying to me, your mother did the best that she could. And I remember my mother was extraordinary with human frailties, like all people have, including myself. But I remember it landing in such a different way and giving me a level of acceptance that I hadn't had before. And it sounds like you've accepted some things differently than maybe, is it in the not accepting them in terms of being content with less, but accepting in terms of understanding? How much of that is about this transformation?
My mum is amazing. So she'll be watching this. Hey, my mum is absolutely amazing. She has always believed in me, and it's like what you just said. It was about me accepting who I am, what I've done, and accepting my story and kind of what I've been through myself, and not being embarrassed by it. If I'm honest,
but how do you teach that acceptance to others? Do you believe there's any thread here that you see with the young people you work with?
Well, I mean, most of the youth that I come in contact with, it's more of an economic concern for them. So they're more victims of deprivation. So it's not necessarily a matter of validation in an era where social media can give you that validation you need anyway. It's more of, why is it that I'm trying to do the right thing, but I see somebody doing the wrong thing flourishing right before my eyes?
But can't deprivation make you think that you're not worthy?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why it's up to us as leaders to come up with unconventional ways to address that, and that's solution-based. You know what I mean? We can have provocative conversations all of the time, and we can talk to her blue in the face, but it only happens when we start to talk about solutions, and those solutions are, in my case, cultural economic development, the ability to benefit from our history, heritage, and culture, and our proof of concept of that is an ability to work with a 7 million population of HBCU and PBI alumni. There are 186 PBIs out there, HBCUs and PBIs out there, and it is our duty and our goal to work with them to bring about a venture capitalist ecosystem.
Say what those acronyms mean for the audience.
So HBCU is Historically Black College and University, and PBI is Predominantly Black Institution. So with that, the proof of concept, once again, is creating an ecosystem where we can fund businesses, we can create millionaires and billionaires, by giving them access to this capital so that they can change their mindset from donors to investors and shareholders, so we can be self-sufficient.
I heard you say, David, that program managers and funders must remember their role is to, quote, this is you, provide help, not to save communities.
Absolutely. So many times.
Elaborate on that.
So many times people enter our communities with a superiority complex. Because I am this person, because I have this, you should do it this way. As opposed to saying, hey, I have these resources. Okay, who needs help? Hey, I heard you guys were hungry. Okay, here's a potluck. I brought this for you, this for you, this for you. Everybody get down, let's eat, right? But instead of that, what we have is people come in and they basically are pretentious and pontificate about what should go on in the community. But they don't, once again, have that proof of concept. They don't have that personal experience. They haven't seen their friends shot down dead. They haven't dodged bullets themselves. They haven't been a victim of gang violence and poverty and deprivation and social exclusion. They haven't been a victim of that. They haven't had to walk in a room and people look at them just because of the color of their skin and undermine them automatically, no matter what their background is. These types of things, just like you were talking about with the mental health thing, that's what's going on in our neighborhood. These kids are victims of mental health and they're self-medicating. So that's why you have kids doing these exotic drugs, because they're self-medicating and that's made popular. So the mental health, my mentor, Baba Ronald Kwesi Harris, he started off with at Bobby Wright on the West Side, mental health facility. Then he brought that proof of concept to Chicago State University, where he then directly affected the male retention rate at that school. So the male retention rate increased tremendously just because of the influence and the reinforcement that he offered. And that reinforcement was based on culture. We were meeting people where they were and where they didn't know that they were. We come from an African perspective. So we're diaspora Africans. So no, I'm not born in Africa, right? But my bloodline comes from Africa. So we've been spread out all across the diaspora, the Caribbean, all of the Americas, even though Mansa Musa had ships coming over here way before Christopher Columbus. But that's another conversation. But I say all that to say the cultural reinforcement is the key. Culture is the cure.
So, Prince Harry, when you hear that, you nod, but you weren't dodging bullets. You weren't in a situation of depravity. You weren't in a situation where the color of your skin could define your life. And yet you understand, because you said, we were talking about this offline, you spent a lot of time listening. Why do you think so many organizations get that wrong? That so many have, not to be critical, but have that superiority complex. You've seen hundreds of charities with good intentions, but go in with a plan, you said, without asking. Why is that fundamental human connection of listening missing in some of these conversations? And why did you see it differently? Was it your time in the military? Was it something else?
Look, as we said offline as well, for someone in my position, you're immediately born with privilege, and then you spend the rest of your life paying back that privilege, and also spending the rest of your life trying to earn the respect of others, but also to use that position, that platform for change. But I don't think I can answer that, because that's as far as we're concerned, as long as we're doing what we think is right, then hopefully others will follow.
But it was never that you were deciding what was right for people. You were always asking them. I mean, if you look at the various efforts that you've had, which have been pretty successful, early days, but still you've seen immediate success, like Full Effect, like Invictus Games, you went and sought opinions first, right? You didn't presume anything.
No, true, but for us, we put the people at the core of everything we do. At the heart of everything we do is the people, or the organisations. Yes, fine. In the media, most of the time, all you'll hear is our names or what so and so is wearing and all that kind of stuff. But actually, our focus is always them. And if that is showing other people how it should be done, then that's fine. We can't control who writes what. But it can be quite frustrating when you're trying to be as positive as possible about a certain issue and trying to make the focus X, Y, or Z, but everybody else is more interested or concerned about something else.
Do you reconcile yourself with that's the price you pay? Because the one positive effect is that organization may be gaining coverage they would never get. So the world does end up knowing about something, even if there's some misplaced focus. Do you say that's a trade-off I'm willing to make?
No, I think as long as I said, as long as the focus from our perspective is the people on the ground and the organisations of which we are supporting on that day, whatever they want to write about, they can write about. But we will do everything we can to make sure that the core of the issue and the charity and their name and the support thereafter is all focused around that.
So I thought there was an interesting theme that was with all of you, which was around mothers. So your mother, you said, had a big influence in leading you to Shift.
Yeah.
Your mother had a big influence in keeping you on track. Your mother had a big influence, and I want to start here with, she was the people's princess. That was the name, the moniker that was given to her. Why do you think she got that moniker? And, you know, when there'd been royals involved in service for a long time before her, but she was positioned very differently. Why do you think she became the people's princess, and what did you learn from that that informs what you're doing today?
I think she had a lot in common with everybody, but also she certainly listened. In a very, very short space of time, she was like a vacuum going around sucking up all the information, all of the criticism, all the issues, all the positives, all the negatives from everybody, and then putting her name and her platform towards some of the biggest issues of which have never been talked about. And we do. In society, we suffer from this illusion or this reality, I suppose, where some problems become so big that nobody wants to get involved. She was the one that changed that. And I will always look up to her as being, my ideal role model, because everything that she did and the way she did it was having an impact. It was making a difference, and that.
So is that informing you and your work?
I think. Look, it's because of the position that we're in and the role that we play as part of our institution. You're in it for life. You're not in it for 4 years. You're not in it for 8 years. You're in it for life. Therefore, everything that we can do we have a bigger, longer platform than politicians, let's say. So therefore, we can't get involved in certain things. But she rewrote the rulebook. She pushed the boundaries more than ever before, and she was successful. And I think that all of the people that she was working with would be incredibly grateful for her pushing those boundaries. But it's not always easy. But in today's world, I think the boundaries need to be pushed more and more.
David and Chantal, David, you said that you're becoming your mother. Are we all becoming our mothers?
Well, not technically, like.
But I mean, just around these mannerisms, values, speeches, is that inevitable that we become our mothers or fathers or?
I don't think so. I think it takes an intentional effort on the parents' side to make sure that they dump those things into you.
Are you glad you're becoming your mother?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, once again, not technically my mom, but. I'm glad because, once again, she's provided me a proof of concept. I've watched her thrive in a misogynistic society as a single black female who was educated, who went and got her PhD at the age of 67. You know what I mean? That's strength. And I can't do anything but applaud her for that. So yes, I'm deeply impacted her, and she's pushed me to the point where now I interact with the Trinidadian government and Cape Verde and the FAMU Investment Committee and all of these different people, and she's trained me in order to craft my conversations with people of this stature. So it's easy. It's a breeze.
Are you the mother of the kids in Nottingham that you're looking after?
No, not of Nottingham. That's just way too many children. I haven't got any myself, so. But I like to think that I'm an auntie. I'm kind of the big auntie for some of them, someone to lean on, a friend that you can count on. I'll always be there. So, yeah, and I'm definitely becoming my mother.
How do you see it manifest itself?
It's really funny because my mum will say that I empower her and she empowers me. So we're both very similar. We're best friends, and we just moan at each other constantly. And then when I hear myself, I go, "Oh my God, I sound like my mum." So, yeah, we both empower each other and push each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chantal Stefanovic, David Peterson, and Prince Harry. Thank you very much.